A very good afternoon to all the course participants attending this distance learning program on Geographical Information System. I am Vandita Srivastav. I work here as head of the department in Geoinformatics department, and also I am course director for this particular Geoinformatics course in the outreach program, as well as course director for IRS ITC Joint Education Program of IIRS. And I'll be discussing with you a couple of sessions on introduction to GIS, overview of geospatial technology, as well as spatial data analysis and various types of analysis. So today, as we start this program, this being the first lecture, let me give you a glimpse of geographical information systems, and then we would cover up other topics, basics as well as some advanced topics in this particular module. That is part of another ongoing course, but for the people who are attending only this particular course on geographical information systems, I welcome all of you to this course and this module. So I begin with my lecture, and I'll be first telling you what all contents I'll be covering in this particular course. So that is, I'll be talking about the basic concepts of GIS, the nomenclatures involved, and the basic definitions. And then I'll be talking about the geospatial data models as well as components of a GIS, the software functionality and the tools that is required to make a GIS work. And then spatial analysis, various types of analysis, basic operations in spatial analysis, and also I'll be discussing on the sources of errors in GIS and data quality and various parameters involved. And finally, I will talk about various applications and the possibilities of using a GIS in various application domains. So let us begin the lecture by talking about the very basic thing, that is geographic information, because that is the basis of the entire domain of geoinformatics. So when we talk about how we describe our world, so any object on this geographic earth or any planet on for that matter, we actually talk about two informations. So for example, if I say this is a tree, this tree must be existing somewhere on the earth surface. So how we describe this? By telling its locational component, the locational information, that is where it is located, the xy coordinates, either in polar coordinate system or Cartesian coordinate system, but basically we talk about the locational information, where it is and what it is, that is the attributes describing this information. So for example, for this tree we can say it is located here at this latitude longitude value, and it is, the species is oak, the height is this much, the age is this much. So that is a description of it. These are the two types of information that form together called geographic information. Please note, something that exists on geographic earth or any planet or in space and in time, it pertains to geography, and therefore it can be studied with GIS. But something that is not relevant to be studied with GIS, something that is not having a geographic relevance, that need not be studied with GIS. For example, books in library, they need not have, they may be having some local coordinate, but they need not be studied with GIS because there is not geographical reference or relevance for that. But it does not mean that something that does not have a geographic reference is not geographic. For example, the same tree, if suppose you did not provide locational information, maybe it is not there, it is not known, but it is still there. The information is there, we have not put it in our data sheet. Okay, but it is still geographic in nature. So we need to understand that anything that has got a geographic relevance can be studied with GIS, and therefore we need to describe it in the two parts, that is the locational part and the attribute part. So once we know that this is what is geographic information, we need to understand from where it comes. So there are ample sources of geographical information. It can be coming from the remote sensing, the satellite remote sensing, that is the remotely sensed images. They can be from aerial platform or terrestrial platform or space platform, but that is the remotely sensed images have got geographic information. For example, they talk about the land covers, the forest, the water, where is land. So all that information is geographic information. When we call geographic information, we are talking about specifically the surface of earth, or earth in general. But if we remove the geo part, then it becomes spatial information. It can be anywhere in space, in space and time. So then in that case we will call it as spatial information. SPATIAL, spatial, not SPECIAL, because SPATIAL means pertaining to space. So the other source of information could be global positioning system, because it directly gives you the latitude, longitude and height. And then the LiDAR can also give you the point data, the point cloud data, which will have the information, the XY coordinates, also the height, and you can associate other attributes to it. Then aerial photography also provides us images and photographs. So earlier we used to have the manual photographs, now we have the digital photographs or the images. Then topo sheets, any survey sheet or topo sheet provides topographical information, that also pertains to geography. And then photogrammetric measurements taken from the two photographs with the specific side and forward overlap. Then the existing maps in geographical information system will also provide you the geographic information. You can also have geographic information from any other sources, such as anything that is giving, for example, the GPR provides you the information about the storm water network that is beneath the surface. And then tabular information, that is you can have the X and Y as the columns here in the table, that you can make entry into the GIS system. You can either directly make an entry, or you can have a pre-prepared table and then import that table to the GIS system. So these are various sources of geographical information. Now once we know that these are the sources from where the geographic information is coming, we need to understand how we represent it. So as we told that there are two types of informations, spatial and non-spatial. Accordingly, we have two types of representations for the spatial data, for the non-spatial data. Now for the non-spatial data, it is a little simpler, that we just need to put the records and the columns. So each record represents the geographic information for each entity or each feature, and the columns here, they represent different types of information. For example, here the locality ID, locality name, all such descriptive information we can put as columns of the table. This is called as the relational form. And then there are hierarchical and network structures also available. For spatial information, and then also object oriented. So there are some 4-5 data models that pertain to, that can be used for representing the non-spatial information. Similarly, for spatial information, there are two representations that are used, vector and raster. The vector, we call vector when we have a vector representation, like X and Y. We represent something in the either XY point or a series of XY points. So here we can represent the geographic data, the spatial part of the geographic data, as point, line or polygon. There are also other structures available, such as the regions and islands, but these are the main feature types that are used for representing the geographic data in vector form. So what is a point? As we studied in our class 10th perhaps, that a point is a zero-dimensional entity. It is basically X and Y coordinate pair. A line is a series of XY coordinate pair arranged in a particular order. So we can say a line is a ordered pair of XY coordinates. Then what is a polygon? It is also a line, but it is a closed line. That means an ordered pair of XY coordinates where the ending and the beginning point are the same. So a point will represent something that does not have a dimension, we just want to display it as a point, will be represented as point. Something that is a linear feature, such as a road or a network, a drainage network, that will be represented as line. And something that is of aerial nature, that is, it has got an area, it has got a spread. Those kind of features will be represented as polygons, such as a city. Now again, that depends upon at what scale we are representing it. So if we are representing a very small scale map, that is we are able to see a huge number of details, but or let's say huge amount of area but very less details, then that is a small scale map, and we can hardly see anything inside a city. We can just see city as a point. That time we will represent city as a point. But if we are talking about high resolution imaging, which is providing very large scale maps, then we see much detailed information about a smaller area, and at that time we will represent city as a polygon. In fact, inside the city the features also we can represent as polygons. So it depends upon the scale at which we are representing. Accordingly we will choose whether it will be a point feature or line feature or a area feature. Now the same information which is represented as point, line or polygon can also be represented as raster. So in case of raster, we do not talk about the xy coordinates. We talk about we talk about the pixels, the grid cells. So this is a grid cell, and this structure is a square structure. We can have linear rectangular structure, we can have hexagonal structure, circular, triangular. All those possibilities exist, but the most commonly used format is the raster format, which is having the square pixels. Sometimes also you would see that it may have rectangular pixels as well. So these are the representations for spatial as well as non-spatial data. Now having understood how we represent the geographic data in various forms, the two types of information. Now let us talk about, so this is another example of the vector and the raster, the same thing being represented as vector and raster. You would see that in vector it represents, it looks much appealing. It here in raster it looks much coarser, but it depends upon how much cell size we have taken. So there is a trade-off here, that if you want to represent very nicely, everything very accurate, you would like to go for vector structure, vector representation. If you are talking about something that is very continuous in nature, so those continuous phenomena, they are usually called as fields, such as temperature, elevation. These are all continuous fields, so they are called as they can be represented better as raster representation. While the things that are much more crisp and man-made kind of structures, they have crisp boundaries. They are called as objects. They can be represented better as vector. So having understood these representations, now let us understand what is geoinformation science or geoinformatics. So there are several names you will hear. We can say that geoinformatics is the art and science, and maybe you can add science, art, engineering, management, commerce, everything you can add here, of dealing with geoinformation. So we are basically talking about geoinformation science or geoinformatics. So art and science of dealing with geoinformation. When we talk about GIS as a computer system, we are talking about a system that is capable of holding this geoinformation, that is capable of holding and using the geographic information that describes various places, various phenomena on the geographic earth. So if we want to make a GIS work, we require several components. So a typical GIS has got either 4 or sometimes we also talk about 5 components, that is hardware, software, dataware, methods and people. So sometimes they are called as hardware, software, liveware and dataware. So liveware is people, and maybe people plus methods, or methods can be part of software. So likewise some people categorize it as 4, but usually if you want to be more crisp, you can describe GIS as a set of 5 components, that is hardware, software, data, methods and people. What does it mean? We require a hardware to make a GIS work, because we require we need to have some way of processing. For that we require a CPU, computer processing unit, we require a display unit, we require a mouse and a keyboard. So that is the simply the hardware, that is a computer system. We may also require some software other than the operating system. We require a application software, that's where the GIS resides, or that is what is GIS, a software GIS, I mean a GIS software. And then we have the data, that is the geographic data, represented accurately, properly in the GIS format in particular software in which we are working. Or maybe we can do imports and exports, but we require the data that pertains to geography, that particular geographic phenomena under study. Then we require people who will be doing all this. They can be GIS users, the end users, or they can be the developers, they can be beginners, learners. So all these are people. And what are methods? When we make a GIS work, I'm sorry, so we we need some specific ways for every application domain. We require a specific type of processing. Those methods are represented as that application specific methods are described, that form the part for methods. Now so that is all about GIS. Now this GIS is not a pure science in itself. It has amalgamated from various sciences and engineering branches. So it encompasses a much bigger umbrella than just GIS. It has amalgamated from it consists of so many sciences like photogrammetry. As I showed you that you can make measurements, so you can you require photogrammetry to make a GIS work. You require remote sensing because that provides major inputs. Then you require geodesy, surveying. So all of these sciences and engineerings and disciplines have made a GIS work. So it is not a pure science in itself. We need to understand that. Okay, computer science is required because we are talking about the software and the hardware. So it is coming from our knowledge of computer science. Then cartography, because we are making maps. So it also has the cartographic concepts. Then we are talking about geographic information is also an information. So we need to manage this information. So we require the techniques and principles of information management, data science, and communication technologies, because we are not just keeping this geographic information on our desktops. We are communicating it over web. We are communicating it from point A to point B. So we require communication technologies as well, because that's what will make a GIS useful. So a GIS has amalgamated from all these, and it is a combination of all of these sciences and technologies. You would also hear various nomenclatures. So when you talk about geographical information system, or when that means we are talking about an information system, not just a complete domain of geoinformatics. But geoinformatics is a bigger umbrella. Then people talk about geomatics, that is more like measurements, making measurements on earth's surface. Then geodesy is of course different, the art and science of surveying. So you will hear several terms. You will also hear spatial information system. That time, because the term geo is not being used, it means it is not just pertaining to earth's surface or earth's, but it can be anywhere. So if you talk about land and water information system, then it has got a different connotation. Likewise, different people have evolved different definitions for GIS. So you need to understand what is the context, and accordingly you need to apply your wisdom and your knowledge for that particular application domain. So a formal definition of geographical information system, we can say that it is a powerful toolbox for solving the real world problems. Now for example, this is my study area, okay, and now I want to work, let's say, on some specific pollution, air pollution modeling I want to do. So I would like to extract all the data as layers. These are called as thematic or administrative layers. We can have administrative map, we can have road map, we can have land use, land cover, or specific domain type maps, such as the soil types, the geology, the lithology. Various layers we can extract as thematic or administrative layers. and then we try to build a computer system having all these layers and try to integrate these as a model, and then we try to find answers to our problems. So that is a typical GIS workflow. So we can say that it provides means to visualize, because we need to visualize the geographic information. We need to store, manipulate, analyze, display and disseminate the geographical data or spatial data. If we call it as spatial information system, then spatial data. So a toolbox that will provide all of these can be called as a geographical information system or spatial information system, if we are not just talking about geo but anywhere in space. Fine. So having defined the GIS, now let us understand what are different steps for carrying out a GIS project. So we need to first understand our objective of study. Accordingly, we will gather the data, collect the data, which can be through a primary survey if it is not available at all, or if it is available from some other secondary sources, then we will go for a secondary survey, or some existing maps can be used. Once our data is collected, we will input it to our GIS system. We need to choose a software. So we have included one lecture also for selection of hardware and software for the GIS. And once we input the data, then we will make verification and correction of the data, and then we integrate all the data together to perform special operations. We need to do some preparations there. I will discuss this example in one of my spatial analysis lectures, how to take you from step 1 to the last step. And once we are satisfied with our spatial analysis, then we can produce our output report, and we can do the dissemination of geo information. So we can also do this step of adding the metadata to the data at every stage of our project, and we can refine the analysis if required. We can also refine the metadata. Metadata is nothing but data about data. Okay. So there are various data types. All of these details will be talked about by my faculty members in their subsequent lectures. So I will not tell detail of everything, but just give you a basic understanding and overview of the concepts. So once we know that how to represent geographic information, and how to bring it to the geographic information, what are various sources, now we need to understand how to capture this information into GIS. So there are several ways. There were old ways, now there are new ways of collecting and bringing the geographic information into the computer system. One of them is, earlier this is an old method wherein there used to be a digitizing tablet, and on that people would place their hard copy maps, and using the digitizer mouse they will first of all install and make it compatible with the GIS software, and then once this data is georeferenced to this screen, then they will move their digitizer cursor. This is the digitizer cursor, so that this will be moved on the map, and accordingly this map will be traced here. But this is an old method, although this is a you should know it as a although it is history, but you should know it as a concept. So nowadays what is done, instead of putting this map on a hard template, this tablet kind of structure, now this map is scanned through a scanner, and then the map is brought to our computer screen, and on that we can do the same process of using a normal mouse to do the digitization work. So this is one method of doing the digitization. Now there are advanced methods like using the GPS handheld GPS system, GPS receiver. Basically you've already studied the GPS module. Those who are attending the GIS as a module, they would have attended the GPS lecture, so you know how to use a GPS receiver to make maps using GPS. Then there are also functionalities now available along with the software APIs, wherein you can do some mobile mapping with a mobile device, mobile phone, and then you can also use total station. So these are some of the sources of capturing the geographic information. Now, once you have captured, stored, if you want to disseminate the geographic information, there are many ways to do it. You can produce hard copy maps, you can produce soft copy maps, you can produce lot of animations and videos and tabular data. You can also disseminate these informations over web. So these are the forms of the output, all known to all of us. Now, what makes a GIS work is the linkage between the spatial and the attribute data. Once we have done that, we can have these functionalities of a GIS to solve the real world problems. So we require these type of functionalities to make a GIS work. A GIS software should have the data acquisition and pre-processing capabilities. That is, it should be able to acquire the data into GIS, it should be able to pre-process it. If there are some errors, it should be able to correct it, it should be able to geo-reference the data, that is, to reference the data with respect to geographic coordinates, and then to manage the data and retrieve the data that is stored in the GIS. And it should be able to do the preparation as well as analysis operations. And finally, it should be able to produce the output and disseminate and visualize the geographic information. So if this set of functionalities are available in a GIS, it is a good GIS, and that is how we evaluate a GIS software. We evaluated it by the functionalities that it provides. The more flexible a GIS software is, the better it is. So having talked about the functions and of GIS, now this is a little detailed list of sub functionalities within each heading. So in the retrieval, you should have retrieval based upon location and spatial criteria and attributes. It should be able to capture through digitizing, through scanning, through nowadays the facilities are provided for even auto digitization. So the algorithms support the auto digitization. If your data, if your map, the scan maps are not too complicated, it can be followed, it can be used, or it can be used in a semi-automated digitization manner. And you can also use capture the GIS information using GPS, as I already told. And so these are various commands and the various sub functionalities in each bullet that will be talked about in this particular module. For integration, for storage, for manipulation, I'll be talking about lot of this part. So querying, spatial analysis, overlays, buffer zones, modeling. Okay, and then it should be able to produce the display, the output. So now let me touch upon a little bit about the how GIS evolved. You would know that earlier there were no concept of GIS. There was cartography, and even before cartography, there were maps produced from the times of Todermal back in 15 or 1600 century, and from then on people have been using the maps in some form. Even the navigators in the sea who would require to move from one place to another place in the sea, they found it very difficult to navigate, so they started with using, first of all they used to use stars, and then the various types of projections were proposed. So Mercator projection came up. So after that slowly GIS evolved, and GIS initially was in a very big huge size called mainframe GIS, wherein it used to be of the size of a room. From then on, development in computer technology also happened, and as the computers were miniaturized, made smaller and smaller, then we came to traditional GIS software, wherein they used to be workstation based, still little huge systems, but workstation based systems used to be there. And then we had the desktop computers that came, so accordingly the GIS also became the desktop GIS, and then lot of applications of GIS came. So after this, ISRI has been the Environmental Systems Research Institute has been a very the ISRI company has been a very pioneer in commercializing the GIS capabilities. So after ISRI, lot of other GIS software also came, even Intergraph, Geomedia, Geomatica, and many other softwares came up. So then the era of professional GIS started, wherein people started using the more advanced and professional version for a specific application also. And then enterprise GIS came, wherein GIS is not just on a desktop but distributed over various segments of that enterprise. And then with the development of internet in late 90s, internet came and internet GIS came. The the ISRI launched map objects internet map server, then ArcGIS server. So all then Geomedia also had its server. So likewise, a lot of developments took place in internet GIS, and slowly it further miniaturized, and the era of mobile GIS came, and now we talk about embedded GIS. People are using now the GIS, some functionalities of GIS in car, in their display system. So the evolution of GIS has happened from, you know, the size of a room to now embedded in a mobile phone maybe. So that is the, you know, development that has taken place. Lot of technologies has contributed to make this happen, from computer science to communication technologies to navigation to remote sensing to you know, nanotechnologies, and also, you know, maybe lot of developments in various domains have made this happen. So that is how GIS has evolved. And now I will talk about one very important concept that is used in GIS, that is topology. So topology is used, the way we understand the, you know, the physical relationships between various objects. So our brains are trained already. We have a cognitive wisdom to decide who is to our left, who is to our right, how we are placed, where we are. So all of this is already inbuilt in our biological neural network. But for the same information to be conveyed to a GIS system, we need to make some rules, and there are various rules. The concepts of adjacency, containment, these are used to connectivity, contiguity, and containment. Basically these three concepts are used to make this GIS system understand which feature is to the left, to the right, is covering or inside. So because we are going to use this geographic information for solving the real world problems, we need to understand the association of features, their physical relationships. So topology is the concept that provides representation. It is a mathematical representation of the spatial relationships. We are not talking about any other type of relationships. We are talking about the relationships that pertain to the geographic space. So spatial relationships. So it is a mathematical representation of the spatial relationships that exist between various geographic features. So I'll explain you, I'll give you examples of what is topology. So that is what I have written here, and how we achieve it by making certain tables. So those tables are connectivity, contiguity, and containment. The containment refers to the definition of the polygons, and how features lie inside or outside or on these polygons. The adjacency is which is to the neighbor, which is in neighbor on the left side, on the right side. Disjoint, I'll explain this. In fact, I'll be using these spatial relationships to explain you various queries. So at that time also I will show you these, but just to explain you, I have a figure here which will explain, and maybe a few rules. These are very basic rules of topology. Please note that there are various types of topologies. For various type of applications you will require various advanced topological definitions, but these are the basic topological rules that are required for any topological relationship and for any analysis to be carried out. So just one simple rule is that every line is bounded by 2 points. So these are 2 points or nodes. Please note that here also there is a point, but that is called as a vertex that defines the shape of the line. You can have a more complicated line here, but all the in between points are called as vertices. These are called as, the end points are called as nodes. Then for every line there are 2 adjacent areas. For example, left polygon and right polygon. So for this line, if I digitize it like this, then this is the left polygon, this is the right polygon. If I digitize from here to here, then this will become left and this will become so the direction of the line decides which is to the left and which is to the right. So direction is also important. The next thing is every polygon or area is bounded by a closed cycle of points and lines. So for example, if this is the area, it is bounded by these lines and these points. So every line consists of points, every area is formed of lines, and there are left and right polygons to each line. There are points that are contained in a polygon or placed over a line or contained outside a polygon or on the edge of the polygon. So there are so many further derivations can happen, but these are three basic topological rules. Every point is surrounded by a closed cycle of lines and areas. Like if you talk about this point, then it is surrounded by these three polygons, it is surrounded by these many lines, it is placed upon these many lines. So these are various topological rules that are the simplest topological rules, the basic topological rules, I would say. Okay, so your data set need to be consistent with respect to these rules. If it is not consistent, you will not be able to perform certain type of analysis. But for some other type, you may not require all the topological rules to be followed. And another one, that lines intersect only at points. So for example, if I have no point here, no node here, then this is single line. But the moment I put a node here, then it is an intersection point, and this is the only allowed situation for a line to intersect. Okay, so here the line is intersecting and there are three lines connected, 1, 2 and 3. So this is one line, this is another line, and this is third line, this is another line. So a line is bounded by two nodes, that is end and beginning node. It intersects only at points, and these points are nodes actually, and these are vertices. These are also points, but these are vertices which define the shape of the feature. Like this particular line has got 1, 2, 3, 4 vertices, but two nodes plus 4 vertices, total 6 points. Okay, I hope this topological definitions are clear, and although they will be further explained to you in the few lectures on data creation inputting, but I just wanted to give you a glimpse of all the things that will be covered throughout this module. Now we talked about what is geographic information, from where it comes, how to represent it, what are various software tools, functionalities required. Now we will talk about where we can apply it, why exactly we are gathering this information. So as I said, geographic information, it is relevant to study if we have a geographic relevance of the phenomena. So if the phenomena under study is of geographic relevance, then we can try to answer these 5 geographic questions. The first one is, what is at a particular location? So we can locate things. So that is one question that we can answer with the help of once we integrate all this information into the GIS system. Then we can answer where is, let's say, steep forest. Where is a steep forest? If I want to see, this is my study area, I have put all the relevant information into the GIS system. So where are steep slopes? Because that's where the soil erosion will take place. So we can identify using the this where command. Then we can ask what has happened since this much time, what are the trends in the data, how the urban pattern is expanding of a particular city. So and when it touched this boundary, when it became radial or whatever, like what is the pattern of data. So why the urban pattern of let's say Pune is more radial, why it is expanding radially, why Bombay is expanding linearly. So all these questions, although we can also have a common sense answer to it, but we can better study and analyze it if we put all the information in the geographic platform. And then how the question of the nature, how, like if fire has ignited at a particular point, how it is going to spread in space and in time. If there is uh, some air polluting industry, how the pollution is going to spread in air, and where all, which are all the areas that it will affect. So these are the kind of questions that we can answer with the help of GIS. So I'll be showing you these examples in my spatial analysis lectures. So so now why to use GIS. With all the background that I gave to you, if we try to answer this question why, it is actually too primitive in current times when we have understood the use of ICT technologies, the geographic information. We are all using GPS in our mobile cameras, mobile phones, and as well as cameras in our cars we are using. So I hope you will all get convinced with me that GIS provides fast accessibility to information. It is providing the ease of data manipulation. We can retrieve the information very quickly. If you imagine doing the same thing using the hard copy maps, finding out what is at a particular place is such a difficult thing. But the moment you have everything in computer system, it is much easy to retrieve the information. The data sharing becomes much more secure and fast, and it becomes possible because we have everything in digital form. We can share the data, the geographic information, and the maps. So security and safety of the data is ensured. Only the authorized logins will be able to access the information. Then updation of the information is easy. If something has changed because of some earthquake took place, some buildings were washed away, some flood took place because of which the landscape has been modified, we can immediately go and update the data, and we can analyze it also, what was the scenario in past and present, and maybe we can do modeling of what is going to happen in future. So it provides a good representation of results. We can visualize much easy. In fact, I'll show you, if time permits, I'll show you some slides where you can see that you can visualize the data as if you were there in the field. Using some additional tools, you can even do that. So faster processing of operations. We can even reduce the life cycle of any project with the help of making it digital. So now the digital twin, it is the world of digital twin technologies, and the GIS makes it possible. It is also a contributor to the technological advancements. It provides solution to many real world problems, and with lot of options you can generate scenarios. If flood flood occurs in this area, which are the areas that will get affected? If I plan something in this area, how should I plan? What are different scenarios I could plan without actually modifying the field? You are modeling the field as if this would have happened, or that kind of event would have happened, and accordingly you can make your planning much better. So these are the advantages of using GIS. And decision making, it is a decision making tool for supporting the societal applications, various types of applications. In fact, not just societal applications, but also other scientific problems also can be addressed. It is a technology that is integrated various sources of informations, so it is very relevant and useful. And it provides dynamic map display and interactive query platform. These are just some of the advantages of using a GIS, and I'm sure that you are all convinced why we should use GIS. That is why you are here and attending this course. Okay, so this is just an example. If I show you this table, what it represents, if I ask you this question, it is quite difficult for you to answer what are the underlying informations in this table. Although you can make out that there is a name, here is the state of the name of the state of India is written, and then there are certain columns. So it is basically a census information. Okay, but you cannot so easily grasp this information, cannot visualize this information if you see it in a tabular form. So not easy to interpret, right? But the moment you put this information in the geographic platform, because all of these states have got latitude, longitude, and some areal expansion, so this the moment you display it as a map, you can and that too, this map is a smart map. You can just click here, and you can, there is an identify button here, you can click it and you get all the relevant information. So just by, even let's say you did not have this button, if you just look at this map, you can see which state is bigger, which is smaller, which is placed where, the topological information, which is where, which is smaller, which is larger, which is sandwiched between two, which is at the coastline. All of this information becomes immediately visible to you the moment you display your table into map. So you see how easy it is to visualize. And then further, lot of tools are there, like this identify tool. You just click this polygon and it will provide you all the attributes associated to this particular polygon. You can do many analysis. We will see in the my subsequent lectures what all we can do with these maps. Okay, so these are smart maps. Now where it is used, what are various applications of GIS or geoinformatics? It is intensely used in natural resources management. You want to know what is the length of the coastline, how the coastline is changing, where the erosion is taking place, where is afforestation or deforestation that has occurred, how the fire is progressing, which are the areas that are wastelands. So many applications are there. The health GIS, there are emerging domains like health GIS, vet GIS, or GIS vet. Then in transportation, GIS T is there. Infrastructure development, it can help a lot in infrastructure development with the help of advanced planning of, if I lay a road here, what is going to happen if I do, if I make a airport here in this area, how it is going to affect my site in adjoining areas, how the traffic will change. All of this you can model in GIS and you can make better decisions. The utility services and supply chain management, we can use it. We can use it for fleet management. If a truck has to go from place A to place B, what will be the optimum path, where all it will stop. Based upon all that information, what should be the optimum path. If you have further constrained network, like it has to deliver the goods in this much time, you can do all the planning if you have the relevant data in the GIS platform. Then it also provides opportunities for business people to use GIS for planning or enhancing their business, like a pizza center. If they want to have a new pizza center, so which are the areas that are addressed, over addressed or under addressed, and which have got more demand. Accordingly, you can do a GIS special analysis in GIS domain and find out these are the areas that are not addressed with respect to that particular facility, and you can have a center there. You can even, it can also help the administrators to have a new hospital or a new fire station. So all these facilities can be planned. Where should I lay a tower for better communication? So it has to be an elevated place. So elevation information can be used along with other informations, which are the areas to be served. So the service areas, all of this can be done with the help of GIS the moment you gather all this relevant information into the GIS platform. You can do the environmental analysis. As I said, if there is a nearby forest, I want to have an airport, how it is going to affect my environment. Or if an industry is coming here or it is already there, how much it is affecting the environmental conditions there. So we can have a better planning if we use the geographic information. It has got societal applications, like I said, health GIS. For a citizen to be much healthier, you need to have a knowledge of not a citizen, but the GIS user or the person who's providing that application needs to know that GIS can be also be used in health sector by understanding how the disease is spreading, the spatial pattern of the disease spread. can be understood, the spatial distribution of the disease occurrence can be understood, how this transmission of disease is happening from one point to another. So if we understand all that, we can take better management decisions and we can stop the spread of the disease. So it can be used for such a then there is tourism, in which we can use GIS. We can have better planning, can give much better facilities to the tourist. Beforehand we know what are all the requirements, how much inflow of tourists is going to happen. If suppose an area is environmentally spoiled because of more tourism, then we can even calculate the capacity, the carrying capacity of that tourist place, and we can regulate the number of tourists in a particular season, especially the peak season or lean season. So all of this planning can happen in the GIS domain. And then disaster management, of course, because we need to understand the infrastructure loss, how we can rebuild it. So all of these domains that I'm talking about, they are very much relevant geographically, and that is why GIS can be of immense help there. In investigation services, what are the possibilities of escaping of a criminal if such a situation occurs. So in crime it is there. So crime GIS, you would hear the term as crime GIS, GIS-T, that is transportation GIS, then health GIS, then vet GIS. For animal health as well it has been used. So I would like to summarize here by saying that application of geoinformatics technology is limited only by the imagination of those who use it. This is a famous quote, that was a statement made by Jack Dangermond, who was the ISRI president, and this is very much relevant even today, that lot of applications are emerging of GIS, because everything that we see around us has got a geographic relevance, more or less. Maybe more than 90% of the things have got a geographic relevance, and that's why GIS is becoming part and parcel of our life. And of course it can be used in scientific research to understand the various processes, the soil erosion, the spread of air pollution. All of this can also be studied to again take better decisions. And so that is about applications where GIS can be used. Now these are some specific analysis that can take place in GIS. The site selection analysis, I will be showing you some examples of this. Then watershed analysis, resource inventories can be made, whether it is natural resources or man-made resources, some ore reserves or some agricultural goods or forest outcomes. So we can make resource inventories, we can even have infrastructure resources. So land management, the network analysis, which I'll be talking about with you about various types of analysis in a few minutes. And then mapping of incidences of crime or disease occurrence, special measurements over areas. If you want to measure, like if you remember that just a few days back there was the breaching in the lake of on Tista river. So if you want to measure how much was the area earlier and now, you can have all of this is happening through GIS. You would have seen some maps on Facebook wherein they are showing the area previously and now of that particular lake. So all of this is possible because the information is geographically referenced, and you can calculate that area immediately the moment you digitize this map, this polygon. Then selection of corridors for migration of wild species, transportation modeling as I discussed, then logistic routing of fleet or any for tourists, resource exploration, facility management, how many hospitals are enough, how many fire stations are required, geoprocess modeling. Of course everything requires a specific set of processes, as I said, the methods part. So all of this can go in that. And then spreads and diffusion, how the fire is going to spread, how the flood water is going to affect the areas. Then topographic analysis, how the surface are distributed, how the the viewshed analysis. Lot of applications are there of the topographic analysis also. And then the demographic analysis, the population studies, the engineering designs. Everywhere GIS has got use. So although in this particular course it will not be possible to show you all the applications, but then there are some for the people who are attending the entire course, they will have lectures on different topics of applications in the third module, that is on applications. So having talked about the applications of GIS, now let me give you some examples of these 5 questions that are pertaining to geography. Like I said, what are most suitable locations of a dam? You know, we can do descriptive, prescriptive, predictive modelings in GIS. So when I say that what are the most suitable locations for constructing a school or constructing a dam, then I am trying to prescribe a model. So this is called prescriptive modeling. Or how the fire will progress in space and in time in next 2 days if it is ignited at a particular point. So we are trying to predict in space and in time. So this is called as predictive modeling. We can also describe the study area, trying to understand how the things are. So that will be called as descriptive modeling. Then okay, why spatial analysis? It is to understand the real world phenomena by applying certain criterias. These could be new criterias or criterias for manipulating the data, and by applying these criterias we try to model the real world or part of the real world, that we call as a study area. So like in this case, this is the part of the past part of the real world that we call as our study area. This has got lot of informations inside it, but then we need to extract this information and prepare these layers. So we can have one layer on land use, land cover, we can have another layer on polluting industry, we can have one on water bodies, the lake and the rivers, we can have one on land use, land cover, or topography, elevation. So all of this information we can integrate in GIS and try to ask it some questions that we call as querying the database, and then once we query we try to find answers in step manner. So following all those steps we can get finally the answer to the questions that we are looking for. So maybe if time permits I could discuss some examples, or maybe I can discuss in my spatial analysis lectures, but these are the steps that are followed to carry out a simple analysis in GIS. That you first establish the objectives and criteria for analysis, then you, based upon the objective and the criteria set, you would know what are the right parameters that you require, and accordingly you will decide what maps are required and you will collect those maps. So you will collect the maps and input into the GIS system. Then next you will prepare this data for analysis. So for spatial and tabular operations you will do the linking of the data and then prepare it, and then you will perform various operations, spatial and tabular operations, then carry out final analysis by integrating, combining these and applying certain overlay operations, overlay, neighborhood and connectivity operations, and then you will evaluate and interpret the results. You will refine the analysis if required, otherwise you will go for production of the output. Now to do this we require various functionalities that I will discuss in my spatial analysis lectures. I will be talking about various type of functions which are little simpler in nature, like retrieval, selection, measurement and classification operations. Then overlay operations like vector and raster operations. So when we talk about vector operations we talk about the vector topological overlays, then raster functions, logical overlays, relational and arithmetic operators, and then neighborhood functions and connectivity functions are also there to study what is associated with that particular location in its neighborhood, and then how the features are connected. For that we require connectivity operations. Just a few examples of analysis, like if I have a land use and a slope map, so if I want to find out where are the forest area which are with steep slopes, so I can simply run a query. Now this information on land use is stored in a column of the table. So land use is forest and slope is steep. Now to make this query run, I need to first categorize my slope into steep, moderate and low steep, like that I need to make categories. Once I have made these categories and these are informations are present as a column, then we can ask a query, land use is forest and the slope is steep. So what is the outcome? So the system will try to find out the areas where these two conditions are satisfied simultaneously. So these are the areas that are resulted, which are steep slopes and as well as forest. So you can find the answer. Now you would notice that some of the area is high, this white color here, because that no data is present in this. In this some data is present, so that is why it is showing in white color. But these are the areas which satisfy both the conditions. So likewise you can ask queries. You can also classify your map or reclassify it from one scheme to another scheme. Then you can perform various types of analysis, such as single layer operations you can perform on one layer at a time. You can perform multi-layer operations or topological overlays involving more than one layers at a time. You can carry out spatial modeling, like I gave example of fire progression, or spread of water or disease spread. Then you can calculate geometric operations, or geometric figures you can calculate, like area, length and perimeter, geometric buffers, distances, numbers, various types of indices. Then you can make specific analysis for studying the point features, using the calculating the patterns of the points. Then you can also study the linear features using network analysis. You can study a third variable with respect to x and y. We call it a surface analysis, because we are trying to study third variable as a surface. It can be elevation, topography, crime potential, population, anything. Then we can also study we can incorporate the fuzziness of nature, like the phenomena. I gave you some examples of fire progression. Now fire will not progress it may progress drastically, but it is a continuous surface. So something that is little fuzzy in nature, like the soil types, they don't there is no abrupt transition of soil types. It is a gradual transition. So this is something fuzzy, that there is soil type 1 or soil type 2. But when we represent it as a map, we only tell one type or the other type. So to represent more realistically this type of soil transition, we need to incorporate the fuzziness of the phenomena in the fuzziness of our data. So fuzzy spatial analysis provides you tools to study that. Then there are geostatistical tools based upon the theory of regionalized variables proposed by George Matheron. It accounts for the autocorrelation that exists in a variable with respect to distance. It is based upon a simple law of geography, that is Tobler's law of geography, that says that things that are similar, that are closer apart, are similar than the things that are farther apart. So things that are closer will be of similar nature. Like for example, if I say I have some ore reserve here, let's say gold reserve, then if I observe this point and a point that is farther away, the point that is closer is more likely to have a similar value with that point than a point that is farther apart. So that type of analysis is very useful in mining as well as in health studies. Then you can also study things in the raster. Whatever you want to do, you can do either in vector or in raster. So there are packages that are raster based or vector based packages. Okay, so so that was about various types of analysis possible in GIS. And then so there are various sources of errors in database, in the GIS data, that you need to take care of when you are doing a GIS project. You need to ensure that you need to correct for the data if the data has creeped into your database, and you need to keep on reporting the data quality parameters in order to minimize the errors. So I'll be discussing about those. So there are three major sources of errors. The obvious sources of errors, I think I'll just give you a brief, because this will also be talked about in one of the lectures in detail. And then there are errors resulting from either the variation of the phenomena itself, or the original measurements. And then there are third type of errors that result from processing of the data. So if any of these type of errors will occur, you will have there will be some uncertainty in the final outcome also, because there is an uncertainty in the positional accuracy, in the accuracy of contents. So it has to be minimized, and we need to try our best to minimize these errors. Sometimes they are errors, sometimes they are just like this obvious sources, age of data, that is you did not get the data of the time that you required. So you will be making some compromises because you do not have the right data available with you. So it's not an error in itself, but it will cause some error or some inaccuracies in your project. So that's why they are called as obvious sources of errors, likewise the others. So these sources have to be taken care of while carrying out a GIS project. And you can that there is a standard task force way back in 1988. It was decided to have this digital cartographic data standards task force in the United States, and it decided that minimum 5 data quality parameters have to be reported in any GIS project. So you need to know what is the positional accuracy of features, the attribute accuracy, the logical consistency, and which includes the semantic consistency of the definitions, as well as the topological consistencies of those rules of topology. Then the data should be complete. So how much complete the data is, it has to be reported. And the lineage, the history, who has operated this map, what kind of density of observations was used in, what was the density of observations of the source map, what were the map projections used. All those concepts are all those figures are to be recorded and placed in the metadata, that is the data about data, in these data quality parameters. So there, now this is a listing of various GIS softwares. These are very old GIS softwares. Now some of them transformed into better versions, and then they are these were some vector based GIS packages, but they also supported the raster processing. These were some of the mainly the raster based GIS packages which also supported the vector processing. Then there are some free and open source software like GRASS and QGIS that are very popular these days, especially the QGIS. The GRASS has also been since long. So these are some of the software, list of software that I thought I'll share with you, although there will be detailed lectures on these. Each of the slides that I talked about will have a detailed lecture, so you will know more about these in subsequent lectures. Now just I wanted to show you some glimpse of application uses of this technology, some of the trends, like you can study once you know the topography as well as the geographic information. This is just an image, in fact draped over the topographical information, that is the DEM, and a 3D that is a perspective diagram has been made, perspective view has been made using this and the image. So you can see that you can visualize the world in 3D, 3 dimensions. If you had more maps here, this is just an image, but if you had more maps here, you could have overlaid all of that and you would see a better view of the world than just in the 2-dimensional representation. You would of course require some transformations from 2D to 3D and 3D to 2D, but you can produce this kind of 3D visualization. Then you can do various types of illumination studies. If this is the direction of the sun, this is the direction of viewing, then how much my terrain will be in shade, how much will be viewed, illuminated. So that has got a lot of applications in strategic operations, in planning and installation of facilities at elevated positions. Then this is another perspective diagram. This was actually a video, but right now I think it is not working. And then you can prepare a 3D model of your campus, of a building, of a city. So this is a 3D model. This is a 3D model of the IIRS campus, and this is a 3D city model utilizing the LiDAR data, LiDAR point clouds. You can make a model of part of your city or the entire city or a colony. So this is the 3D model of the entire city, maybe you can say part of the entire city which is on coastal city, you know. Then you can have immersive visualization utilizing some additional tools such as the camera, and some sensors. You can feel as if you were in the field. So you need not go to the field, you will feel that you are in the field if you have relevant information and the required instrumentation. Then you can make a visualization in an immersive way. You are immersed in the field, so it is an immersive visualization. Okay, so this is another view of that. Then you can develop various information systems. You can disseminate over web. This is an example of the tourist information system that we had prepared way back in 98. So that was the age when just internet was introduced, and we had developed this tourist information system as an independent package as well as a package distributed over web. So this kind of you can have even health information system, city information system, amenities information. So all of this development can take place with the help of, nowadays you have very there is no issue of the data storage or the processing time or the internet speed. So now all of this is possible in much more easy manner, although this has been possible since some 2-3 decades back. So I would like to finally conclude my lecture by saying that GIS is rapidly growing, becoming a key technology to support decision making at all scales. The near future will still see continued growth and accelerated growth in the data availability. Already we are getting a lot of data from remotely sensed images, from LiDAR, from drones. So with the enhanced computing power, with the higher internet speeds, now the GIS is ready to support decision making. Already the decision making is happening with the help of GIS by various governments. Now for any organization to decide, it is not the strategic decision to make use of GIS, but whether to make use of GIS, but it is to when and how to make use of GIS to support various applications, to support various planning and decision making and scientific studies. So with that, I would like to conclude my lecture, and these are some taken from some of my notes written in 1997-98, and then also some other standard reference books and some studies, some research at our end. So thank you.